important today because they have the potential for an increase in our community with a pandemic going on. You know, for a lot of people, safe havens might have been removed. People are experiencing loss, whether it's loss of income or loss of family, loved ones, friends. Anxiety is bound to increase as well during these really trying and difficult times. People might be experiencing some despair, some loneliness. So awareness is important now more than ever. And it's important to provide this form of awareness so that people can learn how they can nurture their mental health during this state of quarantine and in this state of uncertainty.
I think it's important because it creates awareness. You know, we want to continue to grow in what we've seen, the positive kind of impact and the views that mental health has been taking, and how more people are more aware of it. Younger generations are more hip to talk about it. So I think having a month where you can just share stories and share experiences helps to create more awareness and to frame it in a positive light, right? Not something to run away from, but something to embrace and say, hey, we all have issues, we all have problems, but let's work together to feel better. So I think having a month where we just highlight stories and individuals and recovery and people that are still struggling with mental health issues helps to help anyone know, hey, you're not alone. There are others like you and like me, and we all can help each other get better.
Welcome to Revive Ministries Livestream. Today we are going to be discussing, like we have been this month, about reflecting and healing through a storm. It's been 6 months since COVID-19 has actually really hit the U.S. and a lot of things has happened. A few months ago was May, and it was Mental Health Month. And what you heard was 2 of my podcast guests, and they are returning, and they're going to be joining me today. Sebastian and Karoline, they're great friends, and I'm really excited that they're coming in to share with us their insight. So I just want to welcome in Sebastian and Karoline. Thank you for joining us, and I just want to say thank you. And I know it's hard sometimes with all the scheduling, this new uncertainty, but yeah. So I would like, Sebastian, if you could, and Karoline, just kind of share a little bit. I don't assume that those who are listening actually even heard some of my podcasts. So right. Could you share a little bit about yourself as we dive into this topic? Karoline, go ahead.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us, Robert. And a little bit about me. I am a recent graduate in clinical mental health counseling, and looking forward to starting full time and hoping to work with patients who experience trauma, anxiety, and depression.
Thank you, Karoline. And how about you, Sebastian? You know, stranger, go ahead.
Yeah. Back on the podcast again, or the live stream now. So, I'm
Pastor Sebastian. I'm the associate pastor at Palm Coast Seventh-day Adventist Church in Palm Coast, Florida. I've been here for about a year and a half. I had the privilege of meeting Robert here in Palm Coast. So yeah, that's kind of about me, working with young people and I guess with the whole church, but trying to focus more on the young of heart. So yeah.
Yes. Well, I always like to, say this, before we begin, disclaimer. If you are in crisis, please seek immediate medical attention. There is going to be, I'm going to add certain numbers and certain links in the description of this video after it is posted after this live stream. But at the same time, I also like to give quotes. So one of the quotes I like to share is from Louis E. Boone. It says, "Don't fear failure so much that you refuse to try new things. The saddest summary of a life contains 3 descriptions: could have, might have, and should have." So with that being said, I always like to start a discussion this way. What comes to mind when I share this quote with both of you? Sebastian, how about you go first?
Do you mind putting it back up again? I'm still trying to, I'm processing through that. Yeah, I think that first line really hits, speaks to me, right? Don't fear failure so much that you refuse to try new things. I think a lot of us, the first thing that comes to mind is an Enneagram, Enneagram test. I don't know if anybody's done it, but it reminds me of like Enneagram 6. The type 6 are those that just, their main desire is safety and comfort. Mm-hmm. So they won't many times try new things. I'm an Enneagram 9. So that was just in passing thought that came to mind. But yeah, I think so many times I see it in myself, right? I don't try things. And even like when, as simple as going to a new restaurant and not trying new things in the menu because you know what works for you. And so you're just saying, I'm going to get the same old, even though there's 100 different options. I rather try and, get what I know I like than try something new and not like it. But what happens in not trying new things and being afraid of that is that you miss out on maybe potentially better dishes in this restaurant that you like, right? So
yeah. How about you, Karoline? What does this speak to you? I know. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, it instantly reminds me of regret. Mm-hmm. It's such a common feeling, and I also think about the last stage of development in Erik Erikson's developmental stages, which is ego integrity versus despair. So like on one side, you reflect back on your life and you feel this sense of accomplishment in general. And on the other hand, you look back and you sense regret and it can leave you feeling despair or bitterness. So I think for me, I always think about that. Like when I get towards the end of my life, I want to look back and not feel that sense of regret. Right? But it's interesting because fear of failure is so common in so many people. And it's interesting because our mind, like our body, we respond to fear in a way that's where it's trying to protect ourselves. So like acting on our fear of failure, it could be our way of protecting ourselves from experiences associated with failure, like embarrassment, rejection, sadness. But in the long run, if we keep responding to our fear and not take the chance or try things, as the quote says, we experience deep regret.
Yeah, and I feel
that forever. Yeah,
I feel like it's also very culturally, at least for me. I'm half Korean and half Puerto Rican, so some culturally, it's like being first generation American. My parents came from another country. There's always this kind of, we're trying I remember just really, trying to make my mom proud. That's something that's fundamental for a lot of us. We want to be better than our parents want us to be better than than us. And so with that being said, it was a struggle because when I got sick, when I was on disability, when all this happened, I felt a lot of shame. A lot of shame because I wasn't able to produce this level of so for me, fear was I was enveloped in fear. When I thought of fear, it was crippling. And for me, I was just happy when I came to Florida. It was a big decision to come down in 2012. That's when it came down. And I just remember it's funny. I said this before to one of you. It was there's so many moments in life that you don't think really matter at that point, but actually people's characteristics, their character, help also make me make that decision to join the church, to serve in the church. Because I remember the pastor, he said, "Oh, you want to get baptized?" I'm like, maybe in May. This was January. Maybe in May. And then he's like, "No, how about next week?" And I did, just because a few moments, and some of those moments were people in my life that that had an impact. And it was a lot of uncertainty, but we're reflecting today. And that's what we're doing, because I feel it's good to reflect and look back at what we learned as we move forward. May was Mental Health Month. We're still in the thick of it. And next month is September, which is also, there's a Suicide Awareness Week, I think. And then the September 10th is International Suicide. I think I got that backwards. Prevention Week, and then International Awareness Day for suicide on the 10th. So it is humbling to kind of look back and see how fear kind of prevented me a lot of times to move forward. So I don't know. I like this idea, and I don't want to just throw this out there. There are so many reasons we have to not do things versus do them. I'm not saying for me, in my experience, it's easier not to do anything, especially today. Especially today. So any thoughts on this mentality? Because I'm not saying people are not going through stuff, but there's so many ways to talk yourself out of it. To say, "Oh, I can't do it because of this." And I'm not saying, if we were so scared in the beginning and then we are in the storm like we are, it's going to be crippling to even move forward. So how about Sebastian? You go first and then tell your thoughts, and Karoline, you go after.
Yeah, I think it's going off of that failure. I think it's hard. I feel it now as a pastor. And I don't know if it's a lot of people feel the same way, but as a creator now, we've got, obviously our churches are closed, and we've had to move on kind of more virtually into doing ministry. And it's hard when you look around and you see a lot of other pastors and churches doing great stuff, online and producing content left and right, like daily. And then you can sit back and say, maybe for many content people right now, right, they've been like, "Man, I've wanted to start what is a Stitch? What's it? Where you? I want to stream my video games, right? Or I've been wanting to do live, virtual Bible studies or just inspiring videos." And it can be discouraging sometimes when you look at other people doing it so much better and with thousands and thousands of followers. And so I think it's, again, goes to the core of that. I think COVID has been a blessing in the sense that it's given us this time to really think back to what it is that we can do, right? And obviously we're limited in that it has to be more virtually online, and we can't really go out and do stuff. But I think it's given us the time to really be like, "I'm going to try it out." I mean, everyone's trying it out. You're going to find really good stuff and really bad stuff online. But if anything, this is the time to try it out and really say, "Oh, I'm going to learn from others." There's a lot of great content out there, especially specifically speaking to those that want to do stuff online. But yeah, I think there are many reasons we have, like you said, right, to not do something. But at the same time, as Karoline was saying, like, a quote says, right, you don't want to come to the end of your life and say, "Man, I should have," or "Man, I would have done this," or I could have, or I must, it's nice to just be able to, hey, I have this feeling, whether that's from God, from your family, from yourself, dream you have, just go and pursue it and do it. And so I think living a life without regrets is great. Despite you're going to fail, but the reality is, those failures set you up for what comes next, and you learn from it, right? You're not going to learn many times unless you fall on your face and you're like, "Okay, I got to tie my shoes next time," So I think it's a great time now. It's scary because there's so much, for myself, there's so much going on out there. But many times we're our worst critic and our worst judge. And sometimes there is something, that only you have either the reach or the connection with some people that really need to hear what you need to say. And you think they're hearing it from someone else, but they need to hear it from you because you have, maybe the right way, the right tone, the right person to say it. So your voice is very needed in whatever sphere it is to be out there. So don't let regret or fear of failure stop you from that which you want to accomplish.
Thank you, Sebastian. How about you, Karoline? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I loved everything that Sebastian shared. Yeah, I think it's helpful for us to really dive into how we cope with failure and how we look at that word in general, how we view it in our lives, so that we can grow from it if it does happen, which it can be bound to happen, especially when you're into the unknown, right? Everything going on with COVID, it's unknown for everyone, something completely new to be living through a pandemic. But
Yeah.
it's important to challenge our fears. Think about it. Is it reasonable? Is it debilitating me? Is it likely to happen, what I'm fearing, right?
Mhm.
How am I sure of this? Is it someone telling me to be afraid of this, or am I telling this to myself? The society telling me, or my loved ones telling me? Um, yeah, so to really, like we talked about, reflect on our fear, reflect on all of that, so that we don't end up limiting ourselves from exploration, from living, from life. Yeah.
Yeah. There's this one quote I always like using. It says, "You cannot protect yourself from sadness without protecting yourself from happiness." It's from Jonathan Safran Foe. And the one thing I like about that is that what gives us the most happiness? A lot of times, I would say, and this is my own perspective, is the people, people close to us. That's it. And relationships are complicated. Friendships, even close romantic relationships, those are complicated, but they bring the most joy. We are relational beings. We cannot deny that. The reason COVID-19 is so hard on all of us is because we're apart. We are forced to be apart and be a little bit more careful. I said this in the group. It's weird. I go to the store. I used to not even notice this. Like the little casual, light conversations you used to have with your cashier. It's so much different now. It's like literally I'm like in and out. Like there's times when want to be that way, but it's taken from you. And when things are taken from you in that aspect, it feels different. It feels a little hollow. I'm not saying every single store is that way, but it does feel different. Going out and the whole, even just going out to eat or anything like that, it's a whole different aspect in how I view it and how I feel when I'm in it. So that's how I internalize it. But at the same time, I remember this one quote. It says, "The willingness to consider possibilities requires a tolerance for uncertainty." I even said this in some Bible studies. The good news is only as good as the bad news was. So I feel like after this COVID-19, there'll be some very good news. so there you go. That's my prediction. Anyway, with that, I want to switch gears to, we're kind of talking about this idea, but fear, resentment, focusing on what we don't have. I can say personally, as a peer, person who has struggled with mental illness for several years, it has not helped. It has not helped me. It has not helped my peers. It hasn't helped in general. And I want to switch over to what has helped is connecting, gratitude, forgiving one another. And I guess I can say personally that these have helped in my own personal experience, coping and just growing. I'm amazed of how bold I was at the beginning of this COVID-19. Sebastian knows. I was here. My fiance was in Korea, and she still had to get back, and I had to make some big decisions. But you know what? If I was so afraid of failing, I would not be where I'm at right now. I would not, even because I would just be looking for what other people tell me what to do. And at the end of the day, my mom used to say this: "Who's going to live your life? It's yourself." And so for me, I've learned, adopted that, and I was willing because I knew the value in the person I'm about to marry. So I chose that path because the people who become your closest friends, your closest companions, are the ones that you can have pie in your face moments, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. That's really it is. Because if every single time I have to be afraid of making a mistake with the person I'm closest to, it's kind of this tension. I'm always not being, because reality is we're gonna make mistakes. Some days more than others. So, how about Karoline? How about you start off and share what you think about this concept of when fear, resentment, focusing on what we don't have, don't help us, versus what gratitude, connecting, and forgiveness do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, with gratitude, it's really helpful when we find positivity even in the little things, and um, because we, especially now, we can kind of allow ourselves to wander towards negative scenarios. Like we take our mind there and think about all the bad that's happening or all the bad that could happen in the world or in our lives, and it's normal for that to happen, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to think about those things. But the problem is when we kind of stay there and we keep dwelling on it. So a way to kind of face that would be to also carry our minds to more positive things, more positive scenarios, and to find gratitude in, small things that have happened today or major things that have happened today. Like today, I woke up and the sun was shining through the window and the light reflected beautifully in my room.
Yeah.
That's something to be grateful for. I'm here with my fiance. We got to spend some time together today, or it could be anything. And I think also maybe even keeping like a gratitude journal, writing things down as the day goes by, so that at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you can look back and read it and better reflect on all of these amazing things, even if they're really small, that are happening during these times in your life. So
Thank you, Caroline. How about you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I love what Caroline said. I think that's great. And just, focusing on little things that you don't even pay attention to many times, just the sun coming into your room, the fact that you're alive today is a miracle. And so, yeah, I tend to do that when I go out. We have 2 dogs. We just got a new puppy, so you can probably hear her as she barks. We go out I try to go out for like, maybe a mile walk in the mornings before anything with them, just to get them tired for the day. And in that time, I spend time, in prayer, but also just kind of try not to think about anything about the day yet, because it's so easy to, especially during COVID, if you're working from home, it can feel like you're living at your office, right? Because you're working all the time. And so really finding times throughout your day, I think, to stop from all the running back and fro in your mind and physically, to really just connect with yourself, with God, if you're religious or connected to some faith tradition, and also to just center yourself, I think, right, to focus on the good things of life, right? So you're like, when I walk around, I'm looking at the trees and I hear the birds singing, and it's like, man, this is just, life is cool, and then you get back home and you have the emails and you're like, oh, life sucks. But it's just nice to have those moments, right, where I think, like you're saying, gratitude, right? Just being grateful that you're not sick, or if you are, that you're still alive and you're still doing good. And I think that another point there in connecting, right, I think it's so important. Especially now, I think we've all feel it, that we really miss the physical connection, right? It's just not the same. Even when you go out, everyone's just in a rush to go back home. So this has really focused and allowed us to really realize the importance of physical connection. I think it's also been a good time for a lot of people to connect, maybe that weren't connecting before virtually. You're now able to FaceTime and Zoom, since you're home now. But it still doesn't take away from actually hanging out with the person. Yeah. But I think one thing that we can learn from this is the importance of reaching out to others, right? It's so easy to get so stuck in your own gooiness and like sorrow that you're just like, oh, woe is me. But then when you start reaching out to others to see how they're doing, it just seems like it brightens up your day. That's what I've seen in my life, So when I'm really down in my dumps, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna reach out and see if, maybe connect with others and see how they're doing. And just in doing that, right, having conversations with others, it really does help you to, in connecting and being grateful each day, to just have a healthy mindset, emotional health and mental health too, because it's been so easy to just, when it's a rainy day, just stay home and you can stay in your pajamas and in your bed the whole time, right? So things like that, to really try to help you connect with others, to really reach out to others, right? The idea of service and how impactful that is, and just being grateful, like Karoline was saying, for the things that you do have, the small little bitty things. So
Yeah, and it's I do like that you mentioned gratitude journal, Caroline, because I just know, like, knowing people, even myself, who struggled with some just addiction or whatever. The one thing that there's a reason why AA and NA always adopt the model of gratitude. You have to fill in. You have to be grateful. I know people who there's a especially when you're in time of crisis, and when you're in time of crisis, there's a time of urgency. That, and I think that's a lot of times we have to kind of control. Sebastian, you talk about hurrying way too much, and we got to kind of prioritize. And this COVID-19 gives us the opportunity. And I have to, like, especially with this wedding thing, we have to find ways to know what's urgent and what's not. Okay, and when we do that well, and we're more attuned by that and more intentional, we can actually find time and space, like you guys are talking about, being grateful for the little things. Writing out journal. I still write journal. I try to journal. I used to do it more often when I did my my devotionals in the morning, or whenever in the evening. I used to even journal, and it has helped. It has helped tremendously. I know that you talk about trauma. I feel like there's always that kind of loss, and we're talking about a lot of people losing not only individuals in their lives, but also loss in, like, value, loss in, like, importance, especially if you lose your job, your identity of who you are. Like, for me, it's like, I guess for me, I would just say this: our value has always been there. Now, I know that, being faith-based, people will be like, well, you could find so many reasons, but value has always been there. We just lose sight of it. I remember this one person describing a bunch of 5-year-olds. You get a group of 5-year-olds and you ask them who's a singer, all of them will raise their hand. You ask them who's a dancer, all of them will raise their hand. Something happens after that. Something happens, and then no one raises their hand. So for me, it gets I remember just John Lennon's response to a teacher's question: what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be happy. So it's just fundamentally, I find my priorities have been shifted. It's been more focused, and one thing I just feel it's made me learn a lot. So on that same track, how important do you think, especially reflecting on these days, mental health, I mentioned month you guys were on, you helped me out, I appreciate it. And then September is suicide, and also it's substance abuse month. There's all these months, we're surrounded by awareness months that talk about mental well-being, positive, stress and positive coping skills, and that you're not alone. There's help out there. So basically, the simple question, however way you want to go with it, what has COVID-19 taught us moving forward? How about Sebastian? You go first, and then Caroline.
Wow, yeah, a lot, right? I think the main thing is that life can be changed in a day, right? Your whole normal way of life, your whole getting up, going to work, driving, coming back, going out to eat in the weekends can completely drastically change. I know a lot of people have conspiracy theories or ideas of different things, but the reality is that life can change drastically in a second. And so I think for me, and something we've talked about before, along the lines of recognizing, reflecting, it's like, what is your pillars, right? What are your foundations when that happens? Because what this has taught us, I think, is that everything, for a lot of people, everything's been going great. Maybe 2020 was amazing. I know for me, it was going great until Kobe died. And after Kobe passed, everything just seemed to go downhill. And so my question is, for myself and for those listening, and, it's as we recognize that this is the reality of life, that in a nutshell, in a minute, everything can change. And as you reflect on what you lean on in those moments, right? What is your foundation? We've talked about this in other podcasts too, Robert. What is it that you lean on in these times? And so if it's been your health and your ability to be exercise hungry and just athletic, but maybe you've had COVID, right? And so now that big pillar of exercise, of my fitness and my health, or even a loved one's health, right? The whole idea of, now that pillar is maybe gone. And so now your life kind of feels like it's falling apart, right? It's asking, what is that that keeps you up when things go wrong, right? Maybe it's been your family, maybe it's been your finances and your job. Maybe you lost your job in the last couple of months because of that, right? So now your career, like your identity was your career. You can't do that. So now you're going through like a mid-COVID crisis, right? And you don't know who you are. So those questions, I know for us, obviously, as a pastor, as a faith leader, I'm drawn to, as Robert was saying, right, the idea that God gives us value, and that my foundation is God, that no matter what happens, right, and I can lose everything, that I have God and I have enough, right? So that's just kind of my question for everyone, right? Not trying to say, hey, yeah, come join the Christians, let's go. It's a good question to have always in mind, right? Is it going to be my family that when worst comes to worst, when everything falls apart, I know my family's there? Or is it my dog, right? What is it that when everything happens, as you're reflecting through COVID, what has taught you moving forward? And I think as we move forward, right, there's going to be probably things that are going to happen like this, right? Maybe another virus or another, who knows, this might lead to an economic crisis later on, or some other stuff, right? And so asking, what am I going to lean on in those times? If this doesn't get better, if we don't have a vaccine, if people don't take the vaccine, if we have this going on for years,
yes,
what does that look like? And am I able to still function properly, or will I always be just kind of? So that's my question as I just recognize and reflect, moving forward. What is it that I'm leaning on? If this doesn't get better, and if it does, if there's something else that comes that may be better, worse, or bigger than this, what is my response then? Maybe hopefully when we're moving through this, we're developing good coping skills. So that no matter what comes after this, we're like, I know how it is. All right, boom. 1, 2, 3. I know what I need to do to take care of my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health, and all that. And so that we'll be hopefully more prepared for whatever can come in life. So, yeah.
Karoline?
Well, I'll just share a little bit, because I think Sebastian shared so many points right there. But yeah, like, life is unexpected, and like me personally, what COVID has taught me, I guess I'll start off with that, is we can plan all we want our life, and that's great, but there are things that we can't control.
Yeah.
We can definitely hit rock bottom, or totally takes us for a whirlwind. Nothing we plan can happen. Like, I also thought this year was going to be my year, graduation, getting married, starting my career. All of that was planned for this year, and none of it has gone the way that I thought it would. But when that happens in our lives, something as drastic or outrageous as this, it allows us to kind of sit with ourselves and face ourselves. And Sebastian brought up a good point. What do we lean on for support when we feel like we're knocked down? And that's important to ask ourselves that question. What have I leaned on? Is it rock solid or not? And if I haven't leaned on anything that has helped me, what can I lean on, right? So COVID, I think it's a great opportunity for us to build strength and to build resiliency. And it reminds me of this quote that I love that says, grow through what you go through. So if we can somehow take COVID and grow from it and learn more about ourselves and somehow be a better version of ourselves at the end of it, then I think that's an amazing thing to accomplish.
Yeah, and healing is a journey. Like the idea of healing takes time. I've lost people in my life, and I can't say there's a quick fix. There's no quick fix. That loss is there. When we're struggling, when we're trying to piece back our value, whether it's losing a job or being separated from the one you love, or even, God forbid, loss. Where is our value? What do we lean on? And what I find is that it's how we see ourselves and how we see others. And in the faith-based circles, it's how we see God that kind of all determine how we see how we react, what choices we make. Because at the end of the day, when I was struggling, when I was I don't know, more out of shape, like on all these medicines and all that stuff, I have very little value. So why would I take care of my health? Why would I care if I had no value of me moving forward? Why would I care about eating right if I had no value in me? So for me, piecing back the value, I feel is fundamentally, this is a great opportunity to do that, because your value hasn't gone anywhere, and it's just it's just been misplaced. But your value is not any job, any person that reliant. The value is, in my perspective, is that I'm Robert Colon, and that's value. You're Karoline, you're valued, and so are you, Sebastian. And because you're Sebastian, and you're, at the end of the day, I've been around enough people to know that this life is short sometimes, and we recognize that real quick. And for me, I would rather be surrounded by the people I care about, not and also with people that will help and encourage me to grow. Not tell me all the things I'm doing wrong and shame me, but also allowing me to make mistakes. It's huge, having that safe space. But I just want to say thank you again, Sebastian and Karoline. I just want to give you an opportunity to share any final thoughts as we wrap up this live stream. So, Sebastian, how about you go first, and then Karoline, you could end.
Yeah, final thoughts. Man, just reach out if you're needing help, right? If you're feeling under the weather for longer than you're used to, or you can't seem to have motivation, or it's just you thought by August everything would be back to normal. You're having a struggle not knowing where to send your kids for schooling, or how work is going to look. So just again, going back to that question, what are you leaning on, right? Asking that question for yourself, and also just reaching out. It's okay. We're all going through this. That's the cool thing about this, is you're not the only one suffering with this. And so it's nice to, we don't have the answers as to what it looks like and how we can move forward per se. It's nice to be able to reach out and, hey, Robert, how you feeling? Oh man, it's been rough. I know it's been rough too. And just knowing someone has been struggling too in a similar thing, I think will help us. So yeah, just reach out. And in doing so, you'll be able to help others as well, because we're all going through this. And again, just asking that question, what am I leaning on? What's getting me through this day? And if nothing, then what can I, as Karolina said, what can I find that will help me move forward every day? So, yeah.
Karoline?
Yeah, like Sebastian was saying, definitely reach out. Even if you feel like no one around you cares about you, there is someone out there that cares about you. I can say for the three of us that we care about you. So definitely reach out for anything. And also, just a thought that I had as we were talking about, as we were having this discussion, the Bible says that God's mercies are new every morning. Joy comes in the morning. So with that, I feel like, we have this sense of promise or hope that each new day brings. Just to, be, reflect on that. Though there are hard times now, with every day comes a new chance, and with time that things can get better, and to just hold on to that hope always.
Thank you, Karoline. I just want to end by saying the value you think you've lost is not determined by the circumstance you're in. It's not about where you are right now, but where you're going. Everyone plays a part, which means the environment needs to be safe, to be wrong, to foster the willingness to get help, the willingness to listen, the room to heal. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I just want to share with you that you could watch the live stream on Facebook and YouTube. Also, you could find the link to it on my website, on Revive Ministry website, reviveministriesfl.com/videos. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Livestream, leaving you with this quote. Thanks again, Sebastian and Karoline, so much. Here's a quote. It says, "Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising up every time we fail." So